Bonjour. C'est une résolution historique qui vient d'être adoptée par le Conseil de sécurité des Nations Unies. Pour la première fois, est abordée de façon globale sur tous ses aspects et sans limitation géographique la question de la protection du patrimoine culturel qui est mis en danger en période de conflit armé. La destruction systématique du patrimoine culturel est un problème majeur qui vise à spolier l'histoire des peuples qui par ailleurs souffrent dans leur chair des conflits, qui vise à réécrire l'histoire et qui met en danger leur avenir. C'est aussi un enjeu majeur de sécurité et c'est pour ça qu'il était légitime et nécessaire que le Conseil de sécurité s'en empare pleinement, puisque le trafic des biens culturels pillés finance bien souvent le terrorisme et aggrave les conflits. Et au moment où revient la paix, le patrimoine est un facteur majeur de rassemblement des peuples et de résilience des sociétés. Pour toutes ces raisons, il était important que le Conseil de sécurité s'en saisisse et je me réjouis que cette résolution, qui a été portée par l'Italie et par la France, ait pu être adoptée ce matin à l'unanimité. Elle enjoint les États à mettre en œuvre un certain nombre de mesures, à mieux coopérer aussi avec les institutions et les organismes qui agissent déjà en matière de protection du patrimoine, et notamment l'UNESCO, que je veux saluer tout particulièrement pour le rôle majeur qui a été le sien, notamment ces dernières années, pour éveiller la conscience mondiale sur ce sujet. Je vous remercie.
I think this number, 2347, will be a number that we are going to remember. It's an historical resolution. It's a resolution that finally, and I would like really to thank Minister Azoulay and the government of France that together with the government of Italy, with the ambassador here in New York, presented an historical resolution. For the first time, thanks to the experience of UNESCO and what we already have done in the past, we affirm that fighting the smuggling and defending the heritage is not just an element of preventing the conflict, but also to set up the outcome of the conflict. Preventing means that respect of the human culture, the civilization that we lived everywhere, especially in the Mediterranean and the Middle East, is something that we are going to use as UN and also as a national government to defend our history and our future. We know that the smuggling of heritage and the destroying of our cultural dimension for many terrorist organizations is a means of strengthening their role and strengthening their capability in order to advance as a terrorist organization. And we know that also with this effort, they destroyed the main tool that we have as a civilization, the respect of tolerance, cultural understanding, a civilization that is coming from the past and, of course, is uniting our history. So this is an historical resolution because for the first time we are affirming in terms of a worldwide community, in terms of UN, that we have to react, and there is a cultural dimension in fighting terrorism and, of course, in preventing and solving the conflict. Once again, thanks to the Security Council, to the British presidency that set up in the agenda this possibility. Thanks again to the French government for this cooperation in terms of resolution and all the members that, a lot of members that co-sponsor this draft that, of course, is signing for who is fighting for peace and working for peace, a new dimension of action in the Mediterranean region, in the Middle East, and worldwide. All the conflict from Mali till Syria, of course, have this cultural dimension that we want to preserve, but also we want to use it as a message. Together with the French government, and also in waiting for the G7 meeting for the culture, we have a tool, we have a new instrument to strengthen our policy and our action for peace. Thank you very much.
You can imagine that as Director General of UNESCO, I'm overwhelmed today after the resolution 2347 of the Security Council. As the Minister and the Deputy Minister just said, this is a historic moment of recognizing the importance of protecting of heritage, of cultural diversity in conflict areas for peace and security. And I do remember in 2014, in December, when I sent a letter to the Security Council asking the Security Council to act after the advance of Daesh destroying Mosul, the museum, and all the destruction that has taken place in Syria, in Iraq, of course, Afghanistan before that. And now under the leadership of France and Italy, which I applaud, we have this historic resolution. For us, for UNESCO, it is quite clear that protection of heritage is the best way to create resilience in societies, to recognize the past, but also to look for the future, because it is so strongly linked with identities. And I do remember the historic, I would say, visit that we made jointly with President Francois Hollande in Mali in January 2013, just a week after the extremists were pushed away from Timbuktu, and we were standing in front of the destroyed mausoleums and the manuscripts that were burned by extremists. How important all this was for the communities in Timbuktu. And I promised to restore the mausoleums, and we did that with UNESCO, with all our partners. I mention this because I do believe that without recognizing and respecting the identities of people, we cannot have peace, we cannot have reconciliation, we cannot have hope also for the future. And all these recent initiatives, the Milan conference in Italy, which was so important to put on the global map the importance of cultural heritage, the resolution 2199 on the illicit trafficking of objects of art, and the strong platform. I would like to thank all our partners that we have created with the Interpol, with the UNODC, with the Carabinieri Italiani, the Unite for Heritage that we have signed, also the task force last year in Italy, the recently held conference in Abu Dhabi with the France initiative, once again of France, and the establishment of the International Fund just 2 days ago, once again in the Louvre with the French president, and I can continue this list. I think today indeed is a historic monument, putting the dots together between security, protection of heritage, the humanitarian aspects, respect for human rights and human dignity and human diversity. And once again, I would like to thank Italy and France for their leadership in this such a historic moment. Thank you.
Can I take a few questions? And I'm going to start with a French question in French.
Madame la ministre, récemment, le gouvernement béninois a formulé une demande de restitution du patrimoine de l'héritage du pays détenu dans les musées français. Apparemment, la France refuse de leur restituer cela. Est-ce que vous pouvez nous donner quelques détails sur ce dossier? Et en quoi est-ce que la résolution adoptée pourrait-elle booster les négociations entre les deux pays?
La question qui a été formulée par les Béninois devant la France a été bien entendu étudiée avec tout le sérieux qu'elle mérite. C'est une question importante. Il y a eu des discussions avec le ministère des Affaires étrangères et c'est une question qui se traite à la fois sur le plan bilatéral et dans le respect des textes, notamment la Convention de 1970 sur ce sujet des biens culturels. Il n'est pas traité dans le cadre de la résolution 2347 qui a été adoptée ce matin, qui, elle, vise bien la protection des biens culturels en cas de conflit armé. Mais ce sujet-là est un sujet différent qui est traité par ailleurs et qui est écouté avec le plus grand respect et la plus grande attention par la partie française.
Thank you very much, and in English to all of you. Congratulations for the resolution, but today at the UN, the talk is always about resources, money, show me the money. So can you explain a little bit more how the resources for those protection, for those soldiers to protect heritage, how are you going to find those resources, especially because I think the first concern that people will have is, are we sure that we're not taking resources away from protecting, human beings. So how are you going to find the extra resources?
Should I start? First, I think we shouldn't oppose the subject of the protection of civilian populations and the subject of the protection of cultural heritage. Both are important, and we are actually trying to find and finding new resources in order to protect cultural heritage. For instance, the conference held in Abu Dhabi last December had two main conclusions. One of them was to create an international fund in order to finance operations of protection of cultural heritage. And there was last Monday in the Louvre in Paris the first conference of donators for this international fund that has been created since last December, and more than $75 million were raised, mainly from states, were raised in order to finance cultural protection. So there is absolutely no contradiction between both objectives, and on the contrary, they are all in the same objective of creating a possible future for the populations.
Maybe I would just add one word. UNESCO has led many campaigns for mobilization of resources for the protection of heritage, and I think that we have been successful in doing so. But of course, when it comes particularly to the protection of heritage and conflict, I would say the sky is the limit. There is so much demand, and nowadays, even if you ask me concretely how much it is needed, I think we still need to make an assessment. I'm talking, of course, about Syria and Iraq. We have been sending our experts on the field. We have recently, I have dispatched missions in Nimrut, in Ashur. Still, Syria is a difficult place because of the security reasons. But I think there is a lot more awareness and mobilization, and I think the fund that was recently established is a strong message of the needs that we have. And this resolution adopted by the Security Council, I believe, will encourage much more the donors, including from the private sector, from the big foundations, the funds, governments, to support such activities.
Thank you very much, Ahmed Fadi, ATN News. My question for Director General Bokova. Now, since funds is always going to be a problem and a question, why there is a reluctance from the UNESCO on adopting new technologies, at least to help into documenting the existing heritage sites in peril, especially that now it's in terms of cost-wise or willingness to provide such technology is quite sincere from many of the organizations involved in this area, but there is still a reluctance into adopting the new technologies and still resolving to the old ways of doing things. Thank you.
There is no reluctance whatsoever. On the contrary, I think that new technologies give us an enormous opportunity to raise the awareness, and this is our Unite for Heritage campaign that we launched through the social networks, a very successful campaign mobilizing millions of people every single day. We work in the area of digitalization of the manuscripts. I give once again the example with Mali in order to preserve, protect them, also show them to the wider public, to the world. But at the same time, you can understand that the virtual, I would say, using new technologies, presenting the sites, does not substitute the conservation measures that we want to do for the authenticity and protecting them in the different circumstances. So I think they go parallel. No reluctance, but we need also to protect them from further degradation and to, as much as possible, pass them to the new generation in their authenticity.
Michelle Nichols from Reuters. A question for you, Ms. Bokova, about the US membership of UNESCO. Have they given you any indication that they're planning to withdraw from UNESCO, and what's your message to Washington on this?
No, not at all. The United States is member of UNESCO. We have worked very closely within the same topic about protection of heritage, preventing violent extremism, including through education. The United States have financed the International Council of Museums, which is a partner of UNESCO, in the preparation of the red lists for the protection of Syrian heritage, Iraqi heritage, updating some of the other Yemeni heritage. And I believe what UNESCO is doing, particularly in terms of countering violent extremism, the prevention and the stopping of the illicit trafficking of art and financing further extremism, and the PV, preventing violent extremism through education, fits entirely within the vision of the United States of what is at stake when we speak about security in the world.
Last question from Al Jazeera, and then we'll
Yes, this question is for everyone. It's a two-part question. One, the establishment of safe zones. How viable can that be, especially given the concerns raised by some of the member nations, including Egypt, about the ongoing threat to private black market theft of their cultural patrimony? And then in terms of prosecution of those who are stealing or selling cultural patrimony, are member states going to be on board with stepping up their law enforcement efforts? Thank you.
Today we had all, together with the director Bukova, we had also an interesting speech by the General of Carabinieri that was here, that has a long experience from '69 in terms of combating the trafficking and the smuggling of heritage. So we have nowadays the possibility to intervene because, of course, the smuggling and trafficking of the heritage is something that is depriving the states of their identity, but also their richness. And if we mention conflict, we know what we are discussing about. So now we have possibilities, and of course, with this resolution, we have even the authorization in terms of worldwide community to intervene and to enter in this network, creating our network of communication in terms of intervention. So there are no safe zone in this sense. In the sense we are defending the states that are depriving themselves of the richness thanks, unfortunately, to this terrorist organization. In terms of prosecuting who is done something, we have an experience now concerning Timbuktu, where there was some prosecution due to the robbery and the stealing of the heritage of the city. So what we are doing here is not just a moral duty of the worldwide community to prevent and to combat the trafficking, but we are defending the states, and the states from their cultural heritage means defending also their possibility of defending their identity, their peaceful living, and also their possibility for the future.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.
The Director General is available for interview.
Director General.
If you'd like to just
Andiamo.